Welcome back, legends. I hope you're all fantastic. We're going to get nerdy with the Eventide H3500 and explore the Mod Factory 1 algorithm today. Now, these units are kind of renowned for certain presets, whether it's stuff like the micro pitch or the intelligent harmonies or the band delays. There's certain factory presets and factory algorithms on there which are just iconic. There's several other older rack units which also have iconic presets, and a lot of people now like to use these vintage machines basically as preset machines. Like you put an Eventide in your rack for the micro pitch shift, you put a PCM70 in your rack for the circular delays. There's a bunch of other units out there which have kind of special presets, and that's totally valid if that's what you want to do. But this box can do so much more, and Mod Factory 1 and 2 basically give you a bunch of building blocks to write and patch in your own algorithms. It's not as hard or daunting as it sounds, but if you're someone like me who's an AxeFX user and you're used to the modern convenience of something like Axe Edit, where if you want to add a reverb in parallel and put a trem on just the tails, or create a custom delay with its own feedback network, you can kind of do that in under a minute. This is probably the first device that lets you actually kind of build effects from scratch with individual blocks, and it kind of seems a little bit clunky, but there is a definite logic to it. So let's dive straight in. We'll swap over to Eventide view now. Alrighty, let's take a look at what Mod Factory actually gives us. We have filters, delays, an LFO section, an envelope detector, we've got 4 mixers, we've got amplitude modulators, and then we've got a patching section and a levels section alongside the ability to set the BPM, the overall mix, and 2 different mod knobs. So in the delays, currently I have delay 1 set to 375 milliseconds with no feedback, and delay 2 set to 500 milliseconds, but I don't have anything patched. So there is going to be signal coming into the Eventide, but nothing coming out. Check this out. So just a simple little chord there. You saw the input levels light up, but there was no processing, because what I have to do is go to the patching section. So the way this works is basically this particular input is going to be the input to this block. So the left output, I'm setting up its input, and I can come here and I can say, well, I want the input for my left output, I know that's confusing, to be, say for example, a delay. So let's navigate to delay 1 right here, and I can repeat the exercise for the right output. Let's set this to be delay 2. Now what I want to do is I actually want to have my delays filtered. So I want the input to my delay blocks to be the output of filter blocks. So let's navigate to the delay inputs before we get into the mixes, and let's start here. So I'll have filter 1 set up with delay 1, and I'll have, sorry, I don't want delay 1 to delay 1. Delay 1, its input is filter 1, and delay 2, let's make the input of delay 2 filter 2 really quickly. So I can navigate over there. Very nice. Now I need to set the inputs to these filters. I'll just make them the left and the right input here. So this really confused me at the start, but drawing some pictures really helped. Okay, so now I've got 2 very basic filtered delays. Let's come back here and just take a look at the values I've got on the filters. Cutoff number 1 is 2 kilohertz, and it's the same for the second filter there. Now if I play that loop in there, I'm going to have a lovely stereo dual delay. So that sounds pretty cool. Now, I could go into the delays and I could add feedback on there, but I actually want the feedback to be degraded by those filters. So let's go back to the patching section in here. What I want to do now is I want to think about what's going in to my filters. So my filters, I'm actually going to set up the inputs to be mixers. So I'll have mixer number 2 goes into filter 2, and for filter number 1, I will set it up with mixer number 1. The mixers are basic summing mixers. Okay, now this is where the fun begins. Let's navigate to the mixer inputs. So mixer number 1, which has 2 inputs, I'm going to set one of the inputs to just be the basic left input, but the other input I'm going to set as the output of the delay. So now I'm actually creating a feedback loop in there, and I'll do a similar thing with mixer 2. The first input will be the right input, and the second input will be delay number 2. So when I actually navigate over to my mixers, I can control the amount of feedback, and I can control the overall input level. I think I've done this right. And what I want to do now is return and actually go to my mixers. So mixer number 1, I want the amount of input signal to be 100%. And let's set the feedback at, say, 30%. And similar thing on mixer number 2, but I want less feedback because it was a longer delay. Okay, now my repeats are going to go through the filter every single time they basically feedback, which is pretty awesome. It means they're going to degrade kind of like an analog delay or an old DDL. Check it out. And that sounds absolutely stunning. What I can do next is I can come through here. Let's exit the mixers and let's go to our delays. So what I want to do here is set up some modulation. Let's say delay modulation number 1, I'll set to be like 4 milliseconds, and I'll go -4 milliseconds for delay number 2. What I can do next is I can come to the patching section and I can patch the delay modulation. So I want its input to be LFO number 1. And you can get really creative with this, like using 2 LFOs into a mixer so that you kind of get wave shaping modulation and a whole bunch of stuff like that, which is really, really cool and really advanced. I won't cover that here, but you can do it, which again, just kind of adds to the power of this device. And let's use LFO1 also for the modulation. So basically what's happening here is the LFO is going to modulate these delays, but I have set them to mirror images of one another, which is going to sound really nice and wide. So let's check this out with some delay modulation now. And I could do some really fun stuff like add amplitude modulators, so I could pan these delays. You kind of don't need that when you have 2 different delays like this. The amplitude modulation would work when you've got 2 delays set the same. But that's basically how you build something using Mod Factory. What I want to show you next are some examples of these dual delays or dual choruses. I really like using this for a dual chorus because we've got filters, we've got modulation in there. We can have like LFO2 modulate LFO1, which is modulating the delays, or so much stuff like that. Anyway, let's hear some patches. Okay, for this example, it's basically exactly the same as the one I built with the same filters and modulation, but I set the delays to the same time so you can really hear that kind of mirror image modulation in there. This one just sounds so warm and gorgeous. Now, if we take the same patch, but we bring the delays down to about 20 milliseconds, we get this absolutely gorgeous dual chorus. This next example is a little bit more complicated. I have added 2 extra mixers so that I can get cross feedback on there, and the individual delays aren't feeding back into themselves. There's only cross feedback here, and I've set delay 1 to 250 milliseconds, delay 2 to 500, so it's kind of like a cheap way to get a circular style delay. It sounds so big and greasy. Probably my favorite example though is taking that last patch and adding some cross feedback, slightly more intense modulation. It's kind of copying an old multi-head echo machine. So even though no one talks about it, these things are amazing delay machines. They sound so warm and almost analog if you program them the right way. And Mod Factory just opens up so many kind of opportunities that you might not find in the factory algorithms. I'll play you all out with a panning delay. This uses an LFO and some amplitude modulation, as well as some modulation on the delays using the other LFO and a bunch of other fun little tricks in there. I hope you enjoyed this particular video. If you want to see kind of more of these like kind of deep dive nerdy videos with the 3500, let me know. If you would just prefer to hear demos of the factory algorithms, also let me know in the comments. If you want to support the channel, links to my music and my Patreon in the video description. I'll play you all out with this big old panning delay. Thanks for watching.